Hey guys, this is Mitch with the Department of Bad Ideas, and yes, I am playing a game that's not Warframe in the background. But I'm playing this game for a reason. I'm actually colorblind. I might have complained about it at some point in the background in one of my Let's Plays or something, but I've been wanting to do a video about playing video games when you're colorblind, or specifically color deficient. I'm not black and white colorblind, but I do have a full across the spectrum color deficiency. I don't know exactly what the term is for. I think it's tritanopia, or hang on, what's the word? I had to write this down. Anomalous trichromacy or tritanomaly or something. I've got one of the stupidly rare versions of colorblindness. The terms are over my head. I'm not a doctor. All I know is I had a doctor tell me, you're 1 in a million. I never want to hear that from a doctor. So, but yeah. I've been wanting to do some videos on how that gets in the way of gaming and ways that you can get around it. Because I've been playing Warframe since it went into open beta. I joined about midway late into update 7, I believe. And I used to have some issues with colorblindness in that game because there were just certain elements of the interface I could not discern, and there were just a lot of little things here and there that they didn't prevent me from playing the game, but they were a bit of a pain. Whereas in Dynasty Warriors here, it's been driving me nuts. A lot of the stuff in the interface is color-coded, but at least for me personally, my vision, okay, the enemy dots I'm assuming are red, are a little bit darker than your ally dots, which I'm assuming are blue, because that's the colors they've always used for the series. But this is another assumption. I had someone check a screenshot and tell me. Your officers that you have with you are green on the map. And for somebody who is red-green colorblind, which is 7% of males, so it's not exactly an uncommon thing, we can't tell apart our own officer, our bodyguard officers from the enemy. I was freaking out the first time I had a full, set of bodyguards with me. I was freaking out, like, holy crap, I just started this match and there's already 3 freaking officers inside my base, and then I realized after a moment, they're like, oh, okay, those are my officers, those are my own guys, and we're good. But it's little things like that, though, that really make it difficult for someone who can't see those colors to play the game. In other cases, I've had, some of the Sega games that come out, more the party game type ones, like the racing games. There was a tennis one that I messed around with my sister. I'm considerably better than my sister at video games, but she would wreck me in a lot of the different game modes in that game because she can see the color that I cannot see. And that color dictated where your shots would go and how you place everything. And in some game types, the objective was to go through things in a certain color order. When they tell me, go, okay, hit the green one, then hit the yellow one, then hit the blue one, then hit the yellow one. And I'm like, all 3 of those colors look exactly the same to me. Especially the fact that they used the exact same tones for all of them, so it was a bit of a pain. So, just stuff like that actually prevented me from advancing the game, and I eventually got sick of it, which to me wasn't that big of a deal because it was a game that was included with the console. So I knew it was just a little derpy party game, but I still wanted to get a few achievements on it and mess around with it. But the thing that I'm trying to get to with this is that, you know, a lot of games are just they're not designed to get around this issue of not being able to see color. Another one I want to point out, I'm going to do a larger video on this. I'm planning on doing a full-on, possibly multiple-part video on what works and what doesn't work with being colorblind in gaming. But one of the ones that came up a lot, because I kind of grew up with the Xbox, so to speak. Not grew up, I'm 25. The Xbox is much later in my time, but when the Xbox came out, I had the choice between a PlayStation 2 or an Xbox, and I decided, I'll get an Xbox. I like the game library a little bit more. I was a fan of Halo back in the day. And their buttons on their controllers are color-coded. They have a blue, yellow, green, and red button. Now, the problem is, a lot of games like to use QuickTime events and stuff like that and cue you to do something based on the color. And the little white letter in the middle of the button, oftentimes, unless it was the X button, was been the only one I didn't really have an issue with, that white would kind of blend in with everything else, and it turned into, to do a QuickTime event, you'd have to recognize the color right away. And there are a lot of times where I can't do it. The button prompt is too quick for me to read the text on it. and I have to rely on a color that I can't see. So I'll often fail a quick time event that requires me to hit A or Y, which are green and yellow respectively. So it's one of those things, you know? I mean, this video was really off the cuff, by the way, in case you haven't noticed. This is something I've been wanting to do. I've got thoughts in my head, and I didn't really script this one out like I should have. I just want to get this off my chest before I do my big video on this. So, but there are a lot of games out there, though, that do a pretty good job of addressing it. Kingdoms Rise, which is a game, it's in early access right now, and I'm planning on doing a Why Not Try video on it, but they just redid their system, so I had to scrap my footage and I'm rewriting everything. They do an interesting system where instead of trying to recolor everything and all that, they're just fixing up they fix up a bit of their core stuff to make it easier to see if you're colorblind, as well as if you turn on colorblind mode, they just put a marker over top of all your allies so you can tell them apart, because that's the only part of it where you have an issue with it, is trying to tell apart your teammates and your enemies in a team game, because you're going to be red team and blue team respectively, and that's, at a first glance, unless you're getting a really close look at them and you can see a lot of their colored armor, that's difficult to tell apart if you're colorblind, and it's by default a little tricky, but it definitely helps. Like that way, okay, that icon over their head is a definitive thing that says, hey, this guy is your ally, don't stab them, because friendly fire is a thing in that game. Where you've also got games like Borderlands 2. God bless them. Holy crap, Borderlands 2. They have a colorblind mode for all 6 different types of colorblindness. Holy crap. So I was in a good mood when I saw that, turn it on, and instead of... It would tell me what the tier each, or what quality tier each weapon was, instead of relying on a color coding. Right in the name of the weapon. And it's just, it's so much easier. They made that, I believe it also does something to the element effects or something like that. Makes them ultra high contrast and stand out a lot more. So that was great. I absolutely loved it. But then at the same time, there are games that don't have the colorblind mode, which is the bulk of them. Because, I mean, some games I understand you don't have time to do a colorblind mode if you're on a deadline, or the way the game was made, trying to do a colorblind mode would interfere with your development time, would not make things work out right, or could possibly be a case of you're so late in development it's not something that you can just go back to and fix. It's like that, I can understand that, but there are some games that it's just you can't play it if it requires any kind of color coordination. So it becomes really problematic. Especially if, like I said, you run into the scenario with like a quick time event or something like that where you need to be able to see these colors in order to complete this thing. And there's nothing more embarrassing than having to go have a sibling come over to your place to help you with 5 minutes of a video game because you can't tell a color apart. There's really nothing more humiliating than that. Especially for me, it's like I need to get my little sister to come over, take a look over her, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be stupid, but there's 3 things right here. Could you tell me what color they are? Or worse yet, try to give them a crash course in a video game in 5 minutes when you're at, you know, the 2/3 mark of the game and everything will eat your face in one hit. Try to have them learn how to play the game then. Oh my god. That would be... I think I've actually put my sister through that at some point, way back when on the Genesis days. Which actually is a nice little segue into another thing. This isn't really an issue nowadays so much, because now everything's got outlines to it, and a lot of the graphical effects create the contours on them. Because a lot of people that are colorblind, we see by contour and not by color. Which was something somebody had told me, and I really looked at it, and I'm like, you know, they're actually right, at least with my vision, that's the case. Because my colorblindness is pretty ridiculous. Color deficiency, terms. But... back in the day, in like the Genesis and the NES days, the Atari days, they couldn't do outlines in their models, and there were a lot of times, especially with I remember Castlevania was one of them where they used really high contrast colors. That was kind of why the game looked as nice as it did. But I realized that I couldn't see anything anymore on some of the maps. I get to an area that was had a lot of blue and a lot of orange. Remember, that was a very common color scheme in their game. And I think it was actually Dracula's Castle was the one that did this. I'd get there and there were some areas of it where I just couldn't see my character. They just blended right in with everything, which seems silly at first, but that's a thing. When we got to the Genesis era, it wasn't as bad, because with that, you started to see some characters getting outlines, or they would, because of the greater color depth, would use darker colors near the edge of their sprites. Sonic the Hedgehog games, for example, those were probably the ones I played the most of when I was younger, back in the Genesis days, and those I didn't have much difficulty with those, because his character model really stood out against everything, and they kept things really high contrast. So, looks like I'm running a little bit low on time here. This is a considerably longer video than I had planned originally. Like I said, I am going to do a much more in-depth video about colorblindness in gaming, and I want to just see what everyone thinks about it before I put the big video up. So, this is Mitch with the Department of Bad Ideas, signing off.